again to Cindy's library, and it is time I told you what I managed to read for the second half of April. So let's get into it. Whoop. Okay, so I read Arthurian Voices by Berlin Flieger, which contains Abilion, a romance of voices, and The Bargain, a comedy of voices. Yes, the first one is basically her mini version of Mallory's complete works, and the second is her spoof off of The Green Knight, which is already quite comedic. So, and I gave a full review, so I will attach a link down below to that. I finally did it. Star Wars, Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising by Timothy Zahn. Timothy Zahn, he is given much credit for keeping Star Wars alive in the 90s. His original Thrawn series, which is now Star Wars Legends, they were blockbusters, and they were the beginning of keeping the Star Wars universe alive through novels. And there are some wonderful ones there, and some wonderful ones they're doing now. Of course, since Disney acquired Lucasfilm, aside from the movies and Clone Wars, yeah, I think that was pretty much everything that was considered canon from Disney's purchase. And everything before that that was not the movies or Clone Wars was considered legends. However, you can't keep a good character down, and Thrawn is a wonderful character. Oh, he actually does have a bit of a conscience, or at least doesn't like wasting resources, and even rebels he considers resources. So he is not as destructive as many as his fellow Imperials. But in this iteration of Thrawn, the interesting thing is he is a military genius. He sees strategies and tactics that no one else sees, and even when he explains it to them, only the very best get what he is talking about. And he's hopeless at politics. He is just not made for politics at all, which is, well, aside from his military skills, is one of the reasons why he is probably allowed to have influence in the Empire, because he's no threat politically. Militarily, yes, you do not want to mess with Thrawn. He studies art, literature, history of the people he is going against, and through that he comes to understand them in a way that allows him to pick them apart, which is what makes him such a great threat, as seen in Star Wars Rebels. But Thrawn Ascendancy, that is before all of that. This would be, well, there's really two timelines in here. This has cool blue end paper, very appropriate for our favorite blue alien. But most of the pages are like this, with just a little blue edging. But we also have memories section that are shaded with a bit of black as well. And so there's the two timelines. You have the memories section where we get Thrawn from pretty young, still in his school days, and already starting to being noticed, explaining some of the events that lead to who he is in the present day. Present day is roughly during the Clone Wars. If you have read the second Thrawn trilogy, the first one that is now canon, the middle one, Thrawn Alliances, that has a kind of dual timeline as well, with Thrawn working with Vader in quote present time, and Thrawn working with Anakin during the Clone Wars in the memories section, or the equivalent of the memories section. And the present line in this book is the Clone Wars because it intersects a little bit with that book. Just a tiny bit, but enough so we know exactly where we are in the timeline. But here is what it says. Beyond the edge of the galaxy lies the unknown regions, chaotic, uncharted, and near impossible, possessing hidden secrets and dangers in equal measure. And nestled within their swirling chaos is the Ascendancy, home to the enigmatic Chiss and the 9 ruling families that lead them. The peace of the Ascendancy, a beacon of calm and stability, is shattered after a daring attack on the Chiss capital that reveals no trace of the enemy. Baffled, the Ascendancy dispatches one of its brightest young military officers to root out the unseen assailants, a recruit born of no title but adopted into the powerful family of the myth and given the name Thrawn. The might of the expansionary fleet at his back, and aided by his comrade Admiral Ar'alani, Thrawn begins to piece together the answers he's looking for. But as Thrawn's first command probes deeper into the vast stretch of space his people call the chaos, he realized that the mission he has been given is not what it seems, and the threat to the Ascendancy is only just beginning. So, yes, we start out with a sudden attack on the Chiss homeworld. And yes, Thrawn is sent to deal with it. But the more he digs, the more he realizes not is all as it seems, and he needs his friend, the Admiral, and a friendly caretaker of a Skywalker who helped navigate the chaos to help unravel this mystery. And so very fun, very wonderful to have Thrawn back. I guess I just wasn't in the mood to read it when I first got this book, but now it's done and I'm glad I read it. Thrawn is such a complicated character and it's so wonderful. So, yes, if you want Star Wars novels, Timothy Zahn's Thrawn series are some of the very best. Highly recommended if that is what you are into. Yes, Why She Wrote. A graphic history of the lives, inspiration, and influence behind the pens of classic women writers by Lauren Burke and Hannah K. Chapman, illustrated by Haley Bales, who some of you may know as Bonnets at Dawn, who started our podcast by putting the Brontes against Jane Austen. And from what I understand, I've only listened to the first few episodes, they got into talking about other female authors. And in this book, they have put a lot of information together. 18 authors, I believe. And it really is a graphic novel for each section, well, there's several topical sections. For example, the first one is the horror of the everyday. The short essay talking about the three authors they're going over in this section. A wee bit about that particular author. And then a graphic illustration of a pivotal moment in that author's life. For example, for Mary Shelley, how she ended up writing Frankenstein, and then a few bits at the end, including some of the most noteworthy works by this author. And so they've got all sorts in here, and not just some of what you would expect. Some of them I did not know a whole lot about. Some of them I'd never even heard for. They have two African American authors and one Asian American author in here, believe it or not, which is quite interesting to read about them. And of course, going back to some of my favorites, like Jane Austen. Let's just say I had a blast reading this. It's a good place to get a taste of a lot of female authors, so quite enjoyable, and I enjoyed the artwork as well. And I finished Beyond the Snow, The Life and Faith of Elizabeth Goudge by Christine Rollins. This is a big book, but I finally made it through it, and quite interesting. Elizabeth Goudge in many ways led a fairly quiet life. She was never married. Her prospects were not great after World War I, so she was encouraged to take some advanced crafting courses. She ended up being an author instead after her father's death. She spent over the next decade caring for her mother and helping provide for her. And then after that, moved elsewhere, basically found a roommate and lived there for the rest of her life. Not a ton of traveling, although a little. Some notoriety, especially after she became famous, especially after they made a movie of her book, The Green Dolphin. But very sweet lady, it sounds like. Very full of her faith. Wonderful example that way, and making the best of circumstances and still managing to find little bits of joy even in the most difficult times, such as in the middle of World War II, with the stress of that on top of trying to provide for herself and her mother. So glad I read this so I know more about her. She wrote an autobiography, Elizabeth Goudge did, so that is on my list, but I think I need a break from her life, so we will see when I get to that one. Let's see. Oh, and I read Castle on the Hill, The Castle on the Hill. World War II, the lives of, well, she's homeless now, middle-aged spinster looking for work, a Jewish refugee, uncle with two nephews, one in the RAF, the other a pacifist, throw in a couple of little girls. Typical Elizabeth Googe, I would say very sweet. I have a full review of this and I will include a link down below. So that leads me to A Better Heart by Tom Christofferson. A Better Heart, the Impact of Christ's Pure Love. I need to read this one again. He talks a lot about charity and shares some wonderful stories in here about what charity really means. Throughout all Scripture, a theme emerges that Jesus is the master physician. He is the living water, the bread of life. He is the good shepherd, and through his love, he will heal our hearts. In A Better Heart, Tom Christofferson invites readers to join him in learning more deeply the Lord's supernal gift of charity, and shows how understanding that gift can change our very discipleship. Their efforts to more fully observe the two great commandments, to love God and love each other, we can become conduits of Christ's pure love. Charity is something I would love to understand better, so I'm glad I read this book. I'll have to go back sometime and read it again and consider it again. Lots of good ideas. Oh, and for those who are wondering, yes, Tom Christofferson is the brother of Elder D. Todd Christofferson. So neat connection there. And I read Case File 6 in the Case Files of Henry Davenport, Grimoires and Where to Find Them by Honor Raconteur. Honor Raconteur is a fun author that I enjoy a lot, and this is one of my favorite series from her. The premise is you have Jamie Edwards, who, along with, I believe, 5 others, was basically pulled from modern day Earth into a different world. She manages to kill the witch, sad but kind of necessary since Belladonna was rather mad and evil, and discovers she has landed in a magical world. Roughly Victorian steampunky as far as technology goes. As she puts it, think about 1900 New York. Automobiles are a new thing. Carriages are still everywhere. Women are becoming a bit more assertive and wanting to have a voice, etc. But the reason why Belladonna pulled her in was she experimented on her. She was the only one to survive, sadly. So her magical core, well, her core of being, I should say, she doesn't have any magic. It is quite unstable, so she'll never be able to go back to Earth, even if she could figure out somehow where that is. She needs magic to help her keep stabilized. But the good news is super speed, super strength, enhanced senses, and she was in the Secret Service, a highly trained federal agent. So she decides she doesn't know about this new world enough to do anything too crazy, so she decides to join the police force as a detective. And who does she get partnered with? Henry Davenport, magical examiner. Little magical power, but he actually got a higher score on the theoretical side of the final magical exam to become a fully licensed magician than a royal mage did, who is classified as a genius. So yes, he knows how to do a lot with a little. He's a bit of a grumpy teddy bear, He has very much a soft spot, but he's an introvert, likes to be mostly left alone, doesn't like most people, and he doesn't like incompetence. Fortunately, Jamie is quite competent. Well, they get thrown together on a case, and without giving any spoilers, they work so together the chief commissioner asks them if they want to stay permanent partners, and basically they say yes. Because with Jamie's abilities, and she's also immune to most magic, which is very useful. So she is a very handy partner to have, whereas Henry is quite familiar with magic and knows where to direct her, which is just as well. He is not athletic. So yes, they get put together for one case. It goes so well they decide to stick together, and they really are a great partnership. So that is the whole premise behind this series, without really giving anything about specific cases away. In this one, this is a great one. How do you catch an elusive thief? There's nothing more delightful than a book fair. At least until Henry learns that a grimoire belonging to the dangerous Reaper set has been stolen without its protective box. When Henry and Jamie go looking for answers, they are horrified to discover more than one volume has been stolen. Jamie has never seen Henry so livid or frightened. The spells in the grimoires, unchecked, are powerful enough to make a building melt. Literally, melt. They need to find them quickly, for the war-era grimoires could tear the city apart and have already gotten a head start. With the thief nowhere to be found and still stealing grimoires, Jamie, Henry, and Royal Mage Seaton are more than ready to catch him. Please and thank you. Oh, and they have a tendency to scribble little notes to each other at the beginning of chapters. And this on the back is a good example of that. Grimoires and where to find them. If only it were that easy. Bookworms unite. So you don't necessarily have to have read all of them to read this one. Certainly, each book has a separate case that is closed in that book. On a personal level, it is true that Henry and Jamie's relationship develops over time. And so for that, yes, if you start with this one, there will be spoilers, but the first one is very fun too. But I highly enjoyed this one. Lots of fun, just what I needed at the time. Sometimes that's just what you need, reading that's just for fun. And then I also read The Bible Tells Me So, Why Defending Scripture Has Made Us Unable to Read It by Peter Enns. So, I am of two minds about this book. On the one level, he makes some good points. His more major points, I probably agree with most of them. Some of the details I do not, but I can appreciate his perspective. But it seems a little bit shallow, perhaps. Maybe I'm just the wrong audience. Maybe I've read too many meatier things. Still, lots of interesting ideas in here. And the other mind, the reason why I did not put it down is he has a very engaging writing style. And I think a few of these sub-chapter titles will give you an idea. When the Bible doesn't behave, the Bible isn't the problem. Worst sinners ever. Let's see. When biblical writers get cranky, God seems like a regular Joe. God lays down the law, sort of. Jesus messes with the Bible. Jesus picks fights. So I would say I'm not sure I can recommend it entirely as far as information goes. Like I said, I don't agree with every point in there, but broadly speaking, he does make some good points, so it might be worth it. And as you can probably tell from the titles of some of the sub-chapters, well, he has a very engaging and rather humorous writing style, which I greatly appreciated. So that is what I have read for the month of April, second half. This is Cindy from Cindy's Library. Thank you for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them. Always interested to hear what other people are reading and thinking. And until next time, as always, I hope we all stay healthy and happy reading.